special meeting. This is to discuss possible solutions and programs to help the unhoused within the city. Time is now 6 p.m. And just the rules of the road are 3 minutes, and we'll call you in order of which folks signed up. Anybody else wants to come up, they can do that after that. So this is about solutions and suggestions for ways we can address the needs of the unhoused in our city. First speaker is Christopher Buzzagallup. Did I say that right? Christopher? Come on up. The floor is yours, Chris.
Am I coming right here?
No. See the podium?
Podium over there. I'm sorry, I can't see that well. I'm legally blind, but I can see just...
You'll get some help. You'll get some help.
What's the podium? Yes. Oh, nice.
All right, so stand right here.
Okay.
There's the microphone.
Just your name and address, Chris?
Okay, my name is Christopher Basigaloop. I was born and raised on Winthrop Street. I currently live on 465 Burris Street in New Britain. I'm a born and raised New Britain resident.
And the floor is yours. What do you want to
Okay,
say?
what I want to say is me and my childhood best friend were recently, later in our lives, diagnosed with illnesses. Mine's legal blindness, but I'm not completely blind, thank God. And it's been a struggle for us living only off of Social Security to pay our bills, our rent, and our utilities. And thank God for the state for food stamps and other assistance and food shares and everything. That's the only way we've been able to get by. A simple thing like the snow the other day, my neighbors had me shovel and made a couple of dollars to pay bills, and it's helpful. But I'm borderline and both of us are borderline homelessness as far as we miss one paycheck, we're over the limit. And I'm a New Britain resident, love New Britain, and I'm just here to educate myself because it's hard for me to read anything, or I can't see the TV, but I listen to the news, and that's how I found out about today's meeting, was on the news today. Oops. I'm here to receive assistance and give any help I can to anybody because that's the kind of person we are. And I think that covers it pretty much. And, I'm grateful for all the help there is so far, like food shares and the city and the state. But, I'm very borderline of homelessness. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Next, Manny Sandoval.
How you guys doing? My name is Manny Sandoval, 19 Sexton Street, New Britain, Connecticut. Basically, mine's going to be short and sweet. I believe that, one, we should be asking the other towns that are in the surrounding area, which we have the influx in, to help pay their share. The same way they have the CBDG money here, I'm sure they have something like that similar, and we should be requesting some kind of those funds. And then the next thing is that city manager position that we all supposedly voted for. I think we should use that money. Right, that's $150,000 that we can use towards this this crisis, because it's not something it's not gonna go away, and the city's been running without a city manager for many years. It's not something that needs to be taken care of right now, and I suggest that we could use that money for this situation right here. All right, that's all. Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you, Manny.
Thank you.
Do I have this right? Mrs. Panofsky?
He's supposed to be in the next meeting. He thought he was in here, right?
Oh, okay. Probably didn't do a good job on his name either. All right, we have somebody calling in remotely. Madam Clerk? If you can hear me, state your name and address, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi, Alicia Strong, 2017 Corbin Avenue. First, I want to thank all of the council members who made this meeting happen today. Thank you so much for recognizing the importance and the severity of what's going on here in New Britain. The main thing I wanted to say today is to focus on the complexity of the housing issue, because there's a lot of different situations people get themselves into, and I think it's so important for us to think about that. For me, the main populations I'm thinking about, first being formerly incarcerated. We have no transitional or halfway houses in New Britain, and basically no landlord will rent to you. The other category I see is victims of domestic violence, which unfortunately has been on the rise both in New Britain and across Connecticut. So I think toxic relationships are also a big part of the housing situation. And then third, people generally with mental health, with addiction needs, and these kinds of things. I think it's really important to categorize the way we approach homelessness, because I think every person has a different root cause, and I think it's important that we're addressing all different ones. On the side of housing, I also think it's really important that we're looking at access to affordable housing right now, because it's really difficult, even for someone who has an okay paid job. It's really difficult right now, especially if you don't have a good credit score, if you have a criminal background, if you have an addiction, it's almost impossible. So it's really pushing people out of the city, and I know so many people I know personally who have left after decades being here because they're being pushed out. And lastly, people on fixed incomes who are maybe homeowners, low-income homeowners, who are really feeling the effect of the tax increases. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you.
All right, that's all the names I have on my list, and I think the remote, there was one caller. Anybody, other speakers to talk about the topic of solutions to these problems? Name and address, 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Patrick Thompson. I live in 44 Brittany Farms Road, New Britain. And I just wanted to discuss the main issue with the homelessness crisis, I feel, is that the housing crisis. The skyrocketing apartment prices that's happening in this city is unprecedented in its history. We've gone through several years in a row with double-digit price increases for rent. On average, it's gotten up to a point where it's unlivable. The housing of urban developments, two-bedroom apartment price for rent is $1,530 for my zip code. That is not affordable with even with a $15 minimum wage. And I work as an HVAC technician, and it is still very, very hard to afford such a rent at that. And my rent was just increased to $1,570 above the rate. Overall, this crisis is leading to gentrification, and it is absolutely putting the homelessness crisis on fire. It will lead to every eviction from these people not being able to afford it, leads to another person on the streets on the cold nights, and they will die if they do not get any type of assistance. My proposed solutions is we need in New Britain to follow up on the just cause laws, and we need to expand it from people below the age of 62. So the just cause laws are people who are you are not able to be evicted for no reason. You have to be proposed an actual reason to be evicted, and that is a law that should be expanded to not just the elderly, but every single person, because it's a human right to have housing, and no one should be evicted for unknown or unvaluable reasons. It is probably a great start to propose that for the city and protect our tenants who, like I said, when the vacancy rate in Connecticut is 3% and it is extremely hard to find affordable housing, and all the tenant assistance programs are drying up. It has been very difficult post-pandemic, and I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, are there any other speakers? Any other speakers? Sir, you want to step forward? Name and address, 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Jason Villani, Wallingford, Connecticut, also a librarian here at the New Britain Public Library. Two essential things to put on your radar for solutions: social housing. It's been done, it's been successful, it's nonprofit, mixed income housing, which is permanently affordable. There's a great paper on it by the People's Policy Project. I have 2 copies of those if anyone wants them. So I think that is one thing that really should be foregrounded, social housing as an actual solution in conjunction with community land trusts are absolutely essential to, I think, getting at the root of this. And both of them have long track records, so it's something that you can already use and that is being used, but carving out nonprofit, community-owned, and social housing, I should mention, is owned either by a nonprofit, the municipality, or the state. So there's a lot of stuff on both community land trusts and social housing, and something I think is essential when talking about this topic to really get to the root of it. And I have handouts on community land trusts, and I have 2 copies of the social housing paper for, any council member that is interested.
We'll take that, Jason, thanks, and you can email me or anybody else with a copy of the study as
Okay.
well.
Want me to
Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks for your time.
These 2, and then one of those.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Any other speakers? Any other speakers? All right, and then you, sir, okay? Name and address and 3 minutes.
My name is Chiquino Oliphant. I believe that the fact of the matter of the homeless shelters have no governing body to be able to state what's going on with internally as far as things that go on in those shelters, the shelters that are going on, there's no immediate alleviation. There needs to be a form of justice for the silent, which is the homeless people. There's no one that if they feel that they want to kick people out of the shelters at any point in time, they kick them out. But then here's the winter, and the next time that you come around, they but they do things as far as being in their means of what they know what's going on, because we are the bottom of the pile. And nobody wants to see that. And nobody wants to hear about that. But they take advantage of it and kick people out. How is that? How is that they kick people out and there's no justice for the silent? I'm a silent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing tonight?
Name and address and 3
My
minutes.
name is Dan Rubino. I live at the YMCA. I'm not homeless, but I was homeless when I got out of prison. I've been out of prison 3 years, and I've been waiting for a place to live. You know, I get $900 a month, and the rent's $600, and then you pay for your phone, you pay for your laundry, and this, before you know it, I have no money for a whole month. I'm willing to pay $700 to live. I don't need I don't know where I am on my list. It's like I'm getting frustrated. I used to be a bad drug addict and alcoholic. You know, I used to weigh like 140 pounds. I weigh over 200 now, but it's very depressing, you know. I'm not on probation, I'm not on parole, I haven't been arrested in 6 years. I got denied in Plainville for felonies that, you know, because I had fights, and I really don't know where to go with it. I'm a veteran. They tell me they can't help me because I didn't serve and kill somebody. I got an honorable discharge, and I got no help nowheres, you know. If it wasn't for the YMCA, I'd be homeless. I wouldn't know where to go. But I live in a little room, it's like a jail cell, just without a toilet, and I share a bathroom with 80 people, 80 men, So I know how it is for one woman to say they can't live with one man. I live with 80 men, and they are the most dirtiest men I've ever been around. Prison bathrooms are cleaner than the YMCA's. I'm sorry, just somebody here from the Y, but it's horrible. You know, and I pay $600 a month, and they could throw me out tonight when I get home for doing something wrong. It's like they could throw you out anytime they want. So you have to be on your tippy toes to do everything right, you know? But I'm willing to pay $700 to live in just to have a bathroom and an oven. I mean, the soup kitchens are nice around here. I go to the Tuesday night dinner every week and Wednesday because I enjoy a hot meal. That's the only way I get a hot meal. I'm not complaining. I'm not homeless, but I'm struggling. And I just hope I don't go back to what I used to be. You know, a drug addict, alcoholic, bumming change at the store, you know. I didn't care about my life. But today I do. And I'm going nowhere. I've been here 3 years. I've been out of prison 3 years. And you just sit in a little room. My room is as big as a closet. And that's all it is, you know. And you got a window, you get hurt your back opening the window. That's how hard it is. It's just, I'm going through it, you know. And I don't want to see myself fall, because if I fall, I'm not the guy that's going to quit. I'm just going to keep going, and I don't want to fall. I ask God every day, please to help me, please help me. And I don't even know where I am on the list. They tell you you're on the list. We can't tell you where you're at. Well, I lost 4 phones, so I don't even know if they have my real phone number anymore. You know, so I'm like, I don't know where to turn. I'm just like, if you're willing to pay someone, you're giving them someone a free apartment, I'm willing to pay $700. I only get $900 a month, because when I was younger, I didn't care about what I did. But today I do, and God bless everybody, and I wish that, you know, I can get some help from somewhere, from someone, and I'm willing to pay $700.
Thanks for sharing that, sir. I'm going to make the call for other speakers. Any other speaker? In the back, in the middle, that's why. Name and address, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Jeanette Carey, Roxbury Road, New Britain. I lived in the New Britain housing project, and I raised my family there. And because of that, I was able to afford to put myself through college. I'm an alum of Central. And after I finished my education there, I went to graduate school, and now I'm a professor of chemistry at Princeton University. And had I not had the chance to live somewhere that I could afford, I was a welfare mother. I had no income. I had no support for my children or myself. I wouldn't be where I am today. I might not even be here at all today. I don't know what happened to the New Britain public housing, but we still need that level of care for people to let them succeed whatever they can.
Thank you, Jeanette. Make the call once again. Any other speakers? Once? Any other speakers? Manny, well,
Just a real quick, anybody who wants to go out to actually, I'm an outreach worker, right? We check up on all the homeless. If anybody wants, thank you, Lori, for what you've been doing and going on your own. But if anybody else wants to experience what she's experienced, contact me. I'm happy to take you
Okay.
guys out, and you guys can come and see what it's like.
thanks for that.
On the real, and real.
All right, thanks, Manny. Was anybody? Go ahead, come on. Name and address, and 3 minutes, you know.
Yeah. I'm Mike. I'm from Farmington. Yeah, I just wanted to say again, you know, one of the other things that homeless and poor people have to deal with in New Britain is these ordinances that criminalize poverty and homelessness, like the $99 tickets that people get for loitering. And again, these are people who don't have a roof over their heads. They're getting these $99 tickets, multiple of them, and then after a few, they're usually, you know, booked and they have a court date and stuff like that. So if y'all could repeal those ordinances, that would help people a lot in what they have to deal with. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, another hands up? Come on up.
Jane Rowe, 90 Streamside Lane, and I'm also the pastor at South Church in New Britain, just downtown. This is I guess, Mike, gave me courage to speak, because I'm not speaking directly to housing, but one of the issues for people who are on the street is not having an adequate place to go to the bathroom, and also a source of water on the hot days of the year. It's hard to imagine those right now. I really think New Britain needs to address public toilets. And part of why I thought to do this now is that I know Mike has mentioned to me that there are, that people get arrested or given fines for publicly using a piece of property, private property or public property as a bathroom. We experience that very frequently at South Church, and it is, very difficult for us to deal with that, for our building personnel to be responsible for cleaning up other people's waste. There is danger to that for them, but it's also just a dignity issue for people to have private and appropriate places to use facilities. And it is also, in the summer, not having water available to people is also a danger issue, a health issue for people. So that is something that I would very much like to see New Britain address soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. All right, make a call. Any other speakers for public participation? Any others? Any others? Public participation is over, and we are now going to proceed to a discussion with our community services folks, our city officials, about what is being done now, and thank you for all your suggestions as we explore ways to alleviate addressing this urgent problem. And everybody's welcome to stay. Afterwards, I as an alderman will be available if anybody wants to talk to me, and I'm sure others will be too. But we need to have our discussion with our city officials, and that will commence in a couple of minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, there goes my gavel. Mallory and Jack and Mary and Scott, come on up.
Facing you or facing them? Okay. Sure. You want to be Mallory? It is 2024. Cushion chair. Oh, look, that's nice. I don't mind starting, so I have like the whole intro for you.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024 special meeting of the Common Council. The time is now 6:28. Mr. Clerk, will you please read roll call?
Alderpersons McNamara.
Here.
Smedley. Sanchez. Boulogne Saavedra. Simpson.
Here.
Russell. Barbosa. Hargraves. McAdam. Gibson. Scott.
Here.
Connors. Malinowski. Pabon. Santiago.
Present.
14 present.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, would you please read into the record the warrant?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading of the warrant.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carried. The reading is waived.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Alderman?
I'd like to make an additional motion this evening to suspend Rule 7, which is the rule of debate, and Rule 9, which is the rule of motions and amendments of our standing rules to allow for an open discussion with our city officials here this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Motion by Alderman Smedley and seconded by Alderman Russell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Before we start, just want to clarify certain things. This is a discussion between the council and the members that are on the table. It's not going to be open between the audience and us. It's just between us, it's discussions. When you have public participation, that was your opportunity to give any feedback or any, things that your concerns are for. This time is for us to have this opportunity to, this informal information that the city is offering. Now that we're there, a few things before that. Make sure everyone still have to turn the mic on when you want to speak and still have to be recognized. It will be an open discussion, and it's freely, and then mostly it's all, again, it's informative, all right? And one other thing is I want to thank American Savings, the Bank of Savings that donated $80,000 to the Friendship Center. That's kudos, because, again, it's only for this year, but it's something to help out alleviate some of that concerns that we have over there. And, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just to clarify, since we suspended Rule 7 and 9.
you still have to open the mic.
Since we suspended the rules, the alderman could remain seated while
Yes,
we
correct.
discuss back and
Yep,
forth. Thank you.
All righty, now we're there. I'm going to open the floor to Mallory Dupree for her to go over the information that she has to provide us. Thank you.
Okay, we're on. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mallory Dupre. I am the program manager for the Community Services Division, which is actually a division of the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department. And I'm also a resident of the city of New Britain. I think that's important to share here. Our team of 6 collaborates with local organizations, government agencies, and volunteers to provide essential services and programs that promote well-being and inclusiveness. We provide advocacy, resources, and referrals for the clients that come into room 301. I'm going to provide you with an overview of community service office functions and then focus on the homelessness component. But I feel it's important that you understand how our whole office functions together. First, our Youth Service Bureau. It handles and coordinates the Juvenile Review Board and the Local Prevention Council. And forgive me for reading, but I just want to stay on task. So we handle and coordinate the Juvenile Review Board as well as our Local Prevention Council. We offer resources and referrals for mentoring, mental health, community service, youth leadership, along with holiday donations and other various donations throughout the year. Our staff are in charge of collaborative working groups to keep relationships and communication with service providers and nonprofits trustworthy, open, and working. In the year of 2023, we just did our numbers, so I'm going to share some of those with you. We have directly and indirectly impacted over 12,000 youth in 2023. The Persons with Disability Office also falls in the Community Services Division, and they provide assistance and support around anything ADA. Through advocacy, we're able to refer clients for care coordination, crisis intervention, education, and information about the ADA. We strive for an accessible community through public development, such as sidewalks for accessible walking paths, education programs with the school district, specifically around autism awareness, and partnerships with public, private, and nonprofit agencies. In the year of 2023, over 800 people came into our office and requested disability services in the year of 2023. The Renters Rebate Program, which is a state-funded program, just to be clear, is facilitated through our Community Services Office in partnership with the Assessor's Office as well, helps out, as well as the Senior Center. We served a total of 876 applicants under the age of 65. To qualify for this program, you must be SSI and SSDI eligible. We gave out the state issued $482,304 of rebate funds to the city residents in 2023. Again, that's for under the age of 65. Anyone 65 and older, they report to the Senior Center, and I did not bring those numbers tonight. The Employee Wellness Program, Holiday Drives, and Farmer Market are other programs that are managed within the Community Services Office. I'm just, again, painting a picture of how our office functions. In the year of 2023, the Community Service Office directly and indirectly impacted approximately 20,000 City of New Britain residents through services, events, supports, resources, and referrals. And lastly, the reason we're here today is to talk about the Homeless Prevention and Housing Office, which has a goal to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. This is a newly staffed portion of our office. New means hired in 2020 under COVID funds, and as of 2021 holds an official position funded through the general fund. This person, Mary, provides procedural guidance to individuals, families, and community members about tenant and landlord rights and responsibilities, manages grants to prevent homelessness, and works with our region's Coordinated Access Network as a co-chair. The Coordinated Access Network is a regional approach that addresses homelessness, homeless matters, and our region also includes New Britain, Berlin, Plainville, Southington, and Bristol. And here is where we work, we plan, we budget, and implement action items with all agencies and service providers who fund and operate within the homeless system. In 2023, the Community Service Office assisted with over 700 residents regarding this matter. 700. This position is new to the city team, but it's not new to the community. The mayor's plan to end homelessness began back in 2007 and was titled Building Hope Together. Since then, it has transformed. It has grown with a lot of community support, caring agencies, and individuals into wonderful partnerships that work tirelessly every day to combat homelessness and help those that are unhoused. I'd like to emphasize how important it is to the community that the city has taken on a staff and leadership role to focus on homelessness matters. Previously, the coordinator of Building Hope Together, which was and is still Mary, was writing grants for her salary, and her salary was reliant fully on grant funding. With the city funding a full-time position speaks to the importance of this matter because it now allows grant funds that have previously covered her salary to now be freed up to go directly back to helping those who are unhoused and directly to the people in need. I just want to emphasize that. Understanding that homelessness is not a standalone problem, there are other layers to this. In 2021, we rebranded several initiatives and task forces to form New Britain Recovers, which helps those who are unhoused, are struggling with addiction, to better identify us as a brand, and that we are here to help. Our partners are engaged with the work, and we have aligned overarching goals to encompass homelessness, opioids and addiction, and youth prevention as a way to share resources, share talent, and identify funding streams. I'm now going to pass the mic over to Miss Mary so she can talk about the history of the work that's been happening for more than a decade and how New Britain does work collaboratively to address the needs of those unhoused.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It's nice to be here this evening. I'm Mary Floyd. I'm the Homeless Prevention and Housing Coordinator for the City of New Britain. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you might want to speak a little louder.
Is that on?
No, it's the same. It's just, you got to kind of get close to it. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm the Homeless Prevention and Housing Coordinator for the City of New Britain, and I've served in that capacity under slightly different titles since the mayor's work plan to end homelessness, now known as Building Hope Together. The New Britain work plan to end homelessness began in 2007, and as Mallory said, the goal of Building Hope Together is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. In 2020, BHT became part of the city's Community Services Department and is one of the 3 tiers of New Britain Recovers. My role as the Homeless Prevention and Housing Coordinator is 1, to prevent or limit durations of homelessness. I do this through the provision of security deposits and rental assistance for qualified households that face imminent homelessness or that have become homeless. Funding for this program comes from the Emergency Solutions Grant and the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain. Funds are often quickly, fully expended. When they are, I refer people to HRA to see if it has funds available. I also have access to funds to pay for very limited hotel stays for families with children enrolled in a New Britain school through the Consolidated School District of New Britain, and monies through the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain's Disaster Response Fund to pay for brief hotel stays for victims of fire. I strongly encourage all tenants to get renter's insurance, as ultimately neither the landlord nor the city is responsible for loss of property or housing due to fire. 2, to provide referrals and information. If someone comes to the Community Services office stating they are literally homeless, that is, they have no place to sleep that night, from December 1st through March 31st, I asked them to go to the Triage Center at 61 Arch Street from 5 p.m. 7 days a week for possible bed placement. From December 1st through March 31st, the Friendship Center and St. Vincent de Paul in Bristol increased their bed capacity by 44 and 20 beds respectively. Sadly, a bed cannot be guaranteed, and priority must be given to families with minor children, the elderly, and those with a documented disability. When the governor enacts severe cold weather protocols, as he did most recently from January 17th to the 22nd, the state provides additional funds to its community partners to ensure that everyone has adequate shelter. Outside of the months from December through March, if someone presents as literally homeless, I ask them to call 211 to be scheduled for an assessment appointment or to go to the hub at the Hope Connection Center at 61 Arch Street for an in-person assessment. At these appointments, the diversion specialists will try to determine if there is any place else someone can stay or any alternative they may have to entering homelessness. For services other than homelessness but which are related to housing, I may refer people internally to the city's building department or to the disabilities advocate. I may refer them externally to a variety of agencies including CMHA, HRA, the Department of Social Services, and the Social Security Administration. I also give general information per Connecticut General Statute about landlord and tenant rights and responsibilities to residents with questions about notices to quit and the eviction process. I stress that I am not an attorney, however, and that to get a legal opinion, they may contact one of the free legal resources available in the area, a list of which I can provide them. And 3, to serve as New Britain's representative on the Central Coordinated Access Network. BHT became part of the CAN when the state decided in 2014 that a more regional approach to battling homelessness was necessary. Connecticut created 7 networks across the state. Ours is the Central CAN, and as Mallory said, it consists of New Britain, Berlin, Bristol, Plainville, and Southington. It's my role to see to it that BHT interests and those of the CAN remain aligned. I do this by serving as the co-chair of the Leadership Committee, which oversees CAN's strategic planning and sets its policies and legislative agenda, and by serving on various subcommittees. I'm the liaison between the CAN and the City of New Britain. I've worked in the area of housing and homelessness for over 30 years. As a case manager at the Friendship Service Center, then as its residential director, as the housing coordinator for community health, mental health affiliates, the coordinator of Building Hope Together when it was housed at the YWCA, and now as the city's homeless prevention and housing coordinator. And I'm seeing an unprecedented rise in the number of people experiencing homelessness and in the number of unsheltered homeless in New Britain. The reasons are many. The pandemic led a number of landlords to sell their properties, many to companies located out of state. This resulted in a lack of connection with their tenants and far less willingness to work with them if they fall behind in the rent. Landlords also raised their rents significantly to make up for losses sustained during the pandemic. Rising housing costs. As there is no cap on rent in Connecticut, the only possible limitation on rent is that it falls within the fair market, or FMR. The maximum FMR for a two-bedroom apartment in New Britain in 2022 was $1,290. In 2023, $1,490, and in 2024, $1,650. Those living on low or fixed incomes have been particularly affected. Another reason is migration. With things difficult everywhere, people go where they perceive things will be better. People from other cities and states have come to New Britain. Eviction, criminal history, poor credit. Many of the people we serve have one or more of these barriers to housing. Mental health, substance use, and co-occurring disorders. Many of the people we serve have mental health, substance abuse, or issues, or both. These impact their ability to find or maintain housing. Possible solutions. More homelessness prevention funding, more emergency shelter beds, more rapid rehousing, more subsidized and permanent supported housing, more affordable housing, incentivizing landlords to rent to those with housing barriers, more readily accessible mental health and substance abuse treatment. These solutions require adequate funding and understanding that these issues are not unique to New Britain. They require regional, statewide, and national support and buy-in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to, Mr. Williams?
I don't have prepared remarks, but we're with the Department of Planning and Development. Do you want me to begin, Scott? Sure. All right.
Good evening. My name is Jack Benjamin. I'm the Director of Planning and Development. I live at 27 Hillside Place in New Britain, Connecticut. Our department consists of city plan, economic development, and community development. The topic of tonight's conversation in my department is the community development side of things, which is an entirely federally funded part of the department. None of it is city budgeted at all, and we receive funds on an annual basis. This is New Britain's 59th year as an entitlement community under the HUD CDBG, home, and now ESG programs. Entitlement communities were started in 1965 under the Housing Act of 1965, which was part of President Johnson's Square Deal program. The money is doled out on an annual basis to communities that started to experience major job loss and deindustrialization in the mid-1960s and have been ongoing ever since. It is non-discretionary funding through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which means it's not up for debate as the federal government passes their budget every year. We can pretty much count on getting something, although that number does change. The allocations are made on a formula basis, which means it's not a competitive grant program that we apply to, nor do we necessarily have control over how much funding we get. Our formula is based on the size of our city, our recent growth within the last years or decade as compared to other cities like us, other entitlement communities. And generally we get awarded because we do a good job, we are good stewards of the money. We report to the federal government, we work with our local HUD office in Hartford, and we get the chance to get another allocation every year. For the past few years, they've sort of nickel and dimed us a little bit. I think we got about 3 to 5% less in total funding last year, and that goes across the 3 programs we receive. We receive CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grants. About 15% cap on that annual allocation can go to social service programs, including our homeless and underhoused service providers in the city. That is a competitive grant process for our service providers. They appeal to us and to you folks on an annual basis to receive funding. The other 2 programs we get funding for are the Home Partnerships, Home Investment Partnerships Program, and ESG, the Emergency Solutions Grant. For about 7 years, we did not receive ESG funding until in fiscal year 21. As we began our annual plan process to dole the money out, we were told that we were receiving ESG funding, which was good news, but you know, the feds basically told us at the last minute we had to dole it out, and we had to build the plane as we were sort of launching that year. In the meantime, we've publicized our ESG funding to more organizations and sort of cast a wider net with those funds. To give you a synopsis of those three categories in general, CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, does have that 50% cap on social service programs. The rest of it we use for some administrative and staffing costs for our department. Again, that part of my department is completely federally funded, not in city budget at all. The rest can go to production of new housing or creation of renovation of existing housing under the CDBG rehab program. Home investment partnerships goes directly into production or rehabilitation of units. Our only new construction component that we have money we can spend on is through the home program. The home program has its own set of rules and regulations. So if our home funding goes into a project, the private owner has to follow fair market rent and rental restriction guidelines for the duration of the term, 15 years for rehabilitation, 20 years for new construction. And then ESG, which is the Emergency Solutions Grant, which is more relevant to the topic tonight. Scott, if you want to expound on any of that.
That was pretty inclusive of everything. We open up the solicitation every year in January. That process ends ultimately in May with this body ratifying an annual action plan which allocates funding to all the applicant agencies that were eligible. And it is a competitive process. That being said, we could only approve applications for those who apply. We do our best every year. We send out, we have a mailing distribution list of, I believe, over 150 contacts from service providers all throughout the city. That process is open now from January 19th through to February 23rd. You could find the applications on our city website. This is a very good time to put that out there. If anybody is interested in applying for these funds, who is an eligible nonprofit service provider, you could find the application on our website.
Thank you. Appreciate the information. Now I'll open it up to the floor, council, for open discussions. Just remember, speak into the mic. Anyone who wants to speak. Alden Russell.
This question is for Jack. Jack, can you explain to us who sets the affordable rent rates?
Sure, so those are federal standards. They're based on general rents in the area. It's a survey, as I understand it, they use a formula in a survey to determine those rents. That's what we are beholden to as a PJ, as a participating jurisdiction. So when we work with developers or we work with property owners and they receive funding through our department, they have to abide by the standards set through the federal government. We do annual monitoring on our recipients of that funding to ensure that they are compliant. We look at leases, we follow up, we go to units that were rehabbed or built with the money, and we inspect them.
Now, this is different than low income as well, correct?
Yeah, I mean, this is affordable per the federal government's definition of affordable housing. And by and large, the regulations that they use to define that is through the Home Investment Partnerships Program.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Pabon.
This is Mallory. Do we get any funds from these other towns like Berlin, Newington, Plainville to help support with the homeless?
No, we don't.
We don't.
Well, to be clear, the CAN, Bristol is a very big participant in the CAN, has its own shelter, St. Vincent de Paul, and is a great partner. The other towns have chosen to handle issues differently for the most part, and they are nominally part of the CAN. They are in our region. Funding to support the CAN and its activities doesn't generally come from those other towns, though.
Okay. Now, I thought we were doing like a short solution as far as, we got 20 people last week or last month, they have no place to stay. Okay, all the places were full. So what happens to those 20 people? They just tell them, go see what you can do?
Sadly, yes, unless we get more funding for perhaps more shelters, or more importantly, more permanent, supportive, and affordable housing, so people don't have to live in shelters or stay in shelters. That is what is happening. So right now, starting in the February, there's a short session for the reps in Connecticut, and we strongly encourage you to encourage them to provide funding that supports the CAN agenda, more of which I can tell you about or send you information about.
I'd also like to comment on the kicking out of those 20 residents. The way that the rules and regulations go for shelter is those that have children and families that are 18 and under, they get priority. Those that are elderly and those that are disabled, they get priority. So unfortunately, yes, if you are an able-bodied person, you're put to the bottom of the list if there's no space for you.
Alderman McNamara, and then Alderwoman Cervello.
All right, thank you.
Cut off.
You done?
I wasn't finished, but go ahead.
Oh, no, you're done?
No,
Let him finish. No, finish, go ahead. Alderman?
Get me in trouble.
All right.
All right. Mary and Mallory, I think you've noted the gap in funding, and we learned with the great development of programs over the last 3 years at the Friendship Center that they've identified actual dollars needed to build up the capacity to meet the demand. So if there is an area where you could use more money in terms of your activities, what would it be? Would it be in a hardship fund? Would it be in a fund to keep people in place in their homes? Where I know there are lots of priorities, but what would you pick?
I don't know if this is on or not. So can you hear me? I
Yeah,
can't
sure.
tell. Okay, thank you. A priority would be generally first cold weather funding, because people, to make it annualized, because every year it's winter, and everywhere it's winter in New England, and in New Britain it's cold. So that would be important. But more importantly, or equally as important, would be to prevent homelessness in the first place. If we are able to do that and people don't have to enter into the homeless system, because it can be very daunting and difficult to get out of. It's kind of like a spiral, you get trapped. So preventing homelessness in the first place, finding a way to staunch the influx, and then providing sufficient shelter for people who are caught in that. And again, the issue is that New Britain is where there is a shelter, or two actually, Friendship Center and Salvation Army. So people come, but the issue is not just a New Britain issue. It's a regional issue, it's a statewide issue, it's a national issue, and so we would need support from all of those entities to be able to work on the problem. But in answer to your question, more shelter, preventing homelessness in the first place. That's what I would say.
If I could just follow up and then move on to others. Jack, does the HUD program carry funds over from year to year? Do you have a reserve fund?
Sure, Scott, if you want to take the question.
So ESG funds, which are most applicable here, have a shelf life of 48 months. So we have 2 years between the time we execute our agreement with HUD and the time HUD takes them away. To date, we've never had to give back any ESG funds. We are very efficient with the funds we choose. That, I think, speaks highly of the process we use to vet applicants and make sure that each dollar is really stretched to ensure its impact. Unfortunately, there are restrictions by HUD on, or caps, I should say, on how much funding we could put each year of our allocation towards certain activities. So through ESG, we're allowed to fund rapid rehousing activities, homelessness prevention, emergency shelter, and street outreach activities. We receive about $145,000 every year, assuming we maintain that level from last year. That's what we're looking at this current funding cycle. we can only ever give 60% of that number to emergency shelter activities. In addition to that, we're required by HUD to seek out the balance of state continuum of care and consult with them at the beginning or during this process. So last year, we were told by the continuum of care that rapid rehousing was our priority. So the Commission on Community and Neighborhood Development and last year's council made an effort to allocate 51% of our allocation to rapid rehousing activities. And that was done to Friendship Service Center. They created a new rapid rehousing program, and community health resources.
Alderwoman Sharon Beloy Saveja.
Thank you. So pardon me, I'm not feeling well, but this was important. I needed to be here tonight. It's kind of to Mary and to Scott. Mary, you gave us a list of things that should be funded. And we as a city need to seek out those funds, I'm assuming through either the state or the federal government. And Scott, you, this is going to be on the city council agenda tomorrow as a report, but the use of the home ARP funding, the $2.2 million, that was received at the end of 2021, but not yet allocated. Are any of those funds available to be allocated in the way that Mary described the gap in services and what we need to do? It's like, how is that money and when is that money going to become available to tackle some of the issues that we're talking about in the strategic way that Mary laid out?
Sure. So this year, for the first time, we're rolling out $111,000 of home ARP to be used for supportive services. I'm not quite sure why they named it home ARP. It's basically ESG funding. There's maybe 90% overlap. Unfortunately, emergency shelter activities are not eligible under the home ARP, but homelessness prevention is, rapid rehousing, street outreach, those other categories. So it gives us the ability as funders to kind of be creative with how we approach this year's funding cycle. Not only is it $1,100,000 more, but it's it gives us more flexibility with how we use our ESG funding. We could open up some things by using home ARP money instead. So in total, over the next 4 years, we're planning on releasing $111,000 each year in this home ARP supportive services funding. There's some additional home ARP. Let me get you the exact numbers. $888,572 for the acquisition and development of non-congregate shelters. We are currently working on developing and deploying a program in which we can solicit applications for would ultimately be developers or maybe a big service provider, maybe Prudence or Friendship Service Center, on how we can roll out that money. But it's kind of a first of its kind endeavor, so we want to make sure that all our T's are crossed and I's are dotted before we roll that out. There's also $877,582 available for the development of affordable rental housing. That is limited to citizens making 20% of area and median income. I don't really have that number in front of me, but it's tough to underwrite into a development project. So we're looking into case studies now and actively developing, or I should say researching, ways that we could put a program together that would make that an attractive incentive for developers.
May I continue? So I'm assuming that other communities got this kind of money with these different categories. Have you looked to see what other communities have done in the development of affordable rental housing or the acquisition and development of non-congregate? Have we looked to see what other entitlement communities are doing with this pool of money?
So to receive this money, you have to be a home entitlement community. There's 7 of us, including the state of Connecticut. And unfortunately, we're kind of at the forefront. So we're trying to look around nationwide, but it seems like we're kind of right on pace, if not ahead of schedule compared to a lot of communities.
I ask you this, Scott, because as you can understand, there's an urgency around the issue of homelessness, both from the emergency shelter and then rapid rehousing and the whole thing, but obviously the unhoused is a priority, so it's a little frustrating when you see a pile of money sitting on the table that is not accessible for those immediate needs. So is there any wiggle room in any of the grants that your office has from the federal government that can be applied for the urgent and imminent needs that exist right now as you plan long-term to kind of define and develop this pool of money specifically?
I will say, the $111,000 that we were planning on making available this year, we have in our home ARP allocation plan, we have earmarked $444,000, and the idea was to roll that out over 4 years. That is internal policy, and if we receive more than $111,000 in applications, we can very well roll out as much as needed.
So can you give me an example of what falls under that category? So who would apply for that kind of money, and what services would they provide?
All right. I just want to find the,
Because it seems like no matter what we discuss, it all comes down to the money, right? So CDBG tends to already be, like, those providers are locked in and counted on, and we're counted on those services. So the only hope that we have is in the new monies. So I'm just curious, is there anything that could be put off in wiggle room or this, that you said you're ready to go at $111,000 annually for 4 years?
I'm sorry, if I could add something just to buy Mr. Williams some time to look for what he's looking for. I also want to bring to light these amounts of money. For instance, we just talked about the $888,000 for acquisition and development of non-congregate shelters. That's money for acquisition of a property and development of. That's not funding to run said shelter and facility, correct? So I just want to make sure that there's an understanding by everybody in this room that this money, it's there, but it's also still not enough, right? As a special projects manager for the school district, I see the cost of construction to build a new facility, and then the school district has an operating budget after that. And it's not cheap to build and or remodel a new building at this point in our lives. So this money is great for the acquisition of a piece of property or the plans to develop, but our architecture plans cost upwards of $500,000 to begin with for some of these projects. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay, and that's in one of those undefined, that you haven't defined that yet. So I'm asking specifically about what's defined and ready to be put out there in an RFP, so to speak, for providers.
Sure. So I'm going to read off, this is directly from HUD, Home ARP Program Fact Sheet on Supportive Services, Eligible Costs Associated with Homeless Prevention Supportive Services. All qualified households are eligible to receive supportive services under Home ARP Supportive Services Activity. Eligible costs associated with supportive services. So we'd have any organization, or excuse me, any entity that provides childcare, improving knowledge and basic education skills, costs of establishing and or operating employment assistance and job training programs, providing meals or groceries, costs of assisting eligible program participants to locate, obtain, and retain housing, costs of certain legal services, costs of teaching critical life management skills, financial assistance costs including rental application fees, security deposits, utility deposits, payment of rental arrears.
Okay, so obviously for me, the part that actually puts people in housing in that definition would be really urgent and something that I would think would be eminent. Is that something, Mary, that your office can apply to as well for those kind of monies?
Okay, it's my understanding that that is accurate, and I intend to. In fact, I was writing that grant before I came here.
Okay, very good, very good. So we didn't get here overnight, and we're certainly not going to come to a resolution of the issue overnight. Sometimes I get frustrated when the federal government, I'm happy that they send us money, but all the restrictions that are put on the money sometimes doesn't meet the need that is on the table in the time that we need it for. But I really appreciate you being here, and I hope that you keep us updated. That's a lot of money on the table, the $888,000 and then the $877 to be undefined. So if you just kind of keep the council in the loop as you move forward, I have no doubt that New Britain's in the forefront and probably will set the model for the other people, just like the Hope Center has done and the governor was here to tout that as well. So anything this council can do to help you, if there's something specific at the state legislature, I saw that their Planning and Development Committee is looking at affordable housing, but if I listen to the way you described the definition of that by the federal government, affordable housing, let's say in a Farmington, a Simsbury, or Avon, looks much different than affordable housing in New Britain. Those numbers aren't the same. So a family that's looking for affordable housing in New Britain that can't afford a two-bedroom here certainly doesn't have the option to cross over into Farmington, Avon, or Simsbury for their affordable housing, if there even exists such a thing in those communities, which is another, I'm just on my soapbox now, point of deep and utter frustration for me, that basically 11 cities in the state of Connecticut take on all the social issues of the state, while the suburban areas get to just march on their pretty way and turn a blind eye to the issues, and it is extremely frustrating. I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but we always have out-of-towners who come here to chastise the council on what we are or are not doing, and I want to make it very clear that as one of the 11 cities in the state of Connecticut, we are always trying to step up and do what's right, while the suburbs get to go like this. And that is extremely frustrating. I will be watching what's happening at Planning and Development up at the state capitol, because seeing that affordable housing bill will be interesting. But again, knowing that affordable housing would look so much differently, and that when people come and talk about the gentrification of New Britain, it also frustrates me, because the people they most want to protect are zoned out of all these other communities. They are not being zoned out of New Britain. Thank you.
You want to speak? Alderman Simpson?
Thank you. I appreciate all of you for staying, especially the crowd here, right? You guys are coming out on your free time, but you guys too for staying past. I know we all, have lives that we're putting on hold here. So what I'm hearing is that the state has this CAN network, right? And there are multiple towns within it, being New Britain, Berlin, Southington, Plainville, Bristol. Did I leave any out? 5? So New Britain and Bristol are the only 2 points of actual service where our unhoused folks can actually turn to find a place to stay. My question is, what exactly are the other towns contributing, if not support directly for these operations or funds, or like?
Each town is different. I don't know exactly what each town is doing, but I know Southington has their method is to help the people in their town.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm presuming Berlin and Plainville do the same. The issue is that New Britain and Bristol doesn't have that luxury, because we have a shelter. We have shelters. So that, I don't know specifically what they're doing, but I know that that is New Britain and Bristol, have to do more because we have more.
Right. Okay. And it sounds like a lot of the city's capacities are restricted by either the number of funds or the restrictions of their uses. Are there grants that we're not applying, that we haven't applied for, that could add to these capacities? Do we know?
I can say we have a lot of support from our local foundations. Community Foundation funds a lot of our programs that we run out of the Community Services Office, including bus pass programs, Fresh Start programs, homeless prevention funds as well comes from them. American Savings Foundation is a huge supporter of the work. As Alderman Santiago mentioned, they granted the Friendship Center, specifically the Hope Connection Center, some funds for their operations, and they have been very active from, I want to say, the beginning of this work. Where else did I go with this? Oh, well, those are basically the main funds. But I can say for the applications that we do have out, funded about $95,000 worth of program funds that we exhausted in about 6 months.
And just on the homelessness prevention, what method has proven to work best to prevent houselessness here in New Britain?
Thank you. Okay. To prevent homelessness in New Britain, the best thing is to try to work with people as soon as the difficulties arise. Some programs, and they wait, you have to have an eviction notice, and by then it's down the road. We try to catch people before they call. I speak with them. I try to see if they will have a way to maintain their housing if we provide funds, because if the next month it's going to be the same, then it's, and then I work with them on their budget. I find out what they spend money on. It's more of a hands-on talk to find out where people are, what they need. There's a limit on how much money we give because we want to help as many people as possible. The way we found that it works best is to meet with the clients or the person or the tenant or the resident and find out where they are, what they need. The goal for the new money coming in is to help people get out of shelter, so that I'm thinking that I will try to focus security deposit funds more on people coming out of shelter. Because if you get them out of shelter, then there'll be shelter beds for someone else who may need it, and that will hopefully reduce the number of unhoused folks that we have.
Thank you. And just one last thing. I recognize there's the prioritization of who gets a bed, right? Families definitely prioritized. My question is, if none of these, if no one from the target audience occupies these beds, does this result in people being turned away while these beds are being unused, or is that not the case?
No. What the shelters ask is that you wait, please, while this process happens, and when when they see who's taken the bed and what beds are left, then they offer them to who's there. Again, sadly, that still may mean that there are some people who don't get one, but no, it's not just we just keep open beds. That's not the goal ever.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
All the women, I got them? Just,
Oh, there we go. Sorry. I just for clarity for community, in the wording of non-congregate shelters, what, can you explain a little bit what that is? Anyway.
I hate this mic, I'm sorry. The traditional shelter is dorm setting and multiple beds and bunk beds and all that. This idea is to be more humane, less crowded, less, particularly with the advent of COVID, less able to transmit diseases. So it's more one person per room, but it's a shelter. It's not a permanent place to live, but it's operated that way. That's what it means.
And then, as far as the HUD rental, how they figure it out, are you referring to ones that figure out by zip code or by region?
So it is, there is a Greater Hartford number. They do break it down by zip code. It depends on the program we're following, what we have to follow.
So for ESG?
So for ESG, we're not running into issues with rental rates. That funding doesn't go into the production, creation, or renovation of units.
It's the home one.
It's the Home Investment Partnerships money and their select CDBG rehab money available.
And that's regional or zip code?
Home Investment Partnerships is Greater Hartford HUD's definition for us.
Alderwoman Barbosa.
I have a question. It was mentioned that the plan with this year's incoming money is to help those that are already in shelters to be able to find affordable housing. What do you do with those families or individuals that are living with others but are not living in shelter?
It's already on. Thank you. It's not to help people find housing. My goal with the money is to, because now landlords want twice the rent, we can only use 1 month. So if the Friendship Center has some funds as well, or another agency, we can combine our funds. It's to help people get out of shelter. But as for families who are doubled up, the HUD definition does not allow for that. It's literally homeless, people in shelters, people in places not fit for human habitation, people who are fleeing domestic violence. Those are the folks that can be helped.
So that would mean in order for that particular family, that individual to receive assistance, they would actually have to be pushed out into the street from the person they're living with to be considered homeless for any type of assistance.
That's the HUD definition of homelessness.
One last question. You stated that it would work if you can find another organization that would help double up the money, but for how long? Would that be for a month, 2
Well,
months?
no, we're talking strictly security deposits with that.
Oh, okay.
That's strictly security deposits. The rental assistance is a one-time assistance, and that's why I talk with the folks to try to make reasonably sure that they can handle it after that 1 month. It's generally, something's happened, a car's broken down, a child gets sick, they can't get to work, and so they, they're trying to catch up with the rent. You're welcome.
Can we just let the record reflect that I'm here as of 7:15?
Noted. Let me get him for, O'Connor.
Good evening. Thanks again for everyone coming down. I have a few questions. My first question is the Connecticut Eviction Prevention Fund, relatively new program. The recent article showing that it prevented over 600 evictions in 2023 from the CT Mirror. Was wondering, it's a new program, are there any opportunities for intervention that you have before evictions occur, and if so, are folks being directed to this program? Do they know it exists?
Thank you. That's what the homelessness prevention program is intended to do before the eviction process, when people are a month behind or 2 months behind and they're working with a landlord who's not trying to evict them. We don't want it to get to eviction. If it gets to eviction, if that process starts, people will have a much more difficult time down the road. We don't need that.
Do they avail themselves of the opportunity to have the back rent paid in the eviction? Because the program also will pay for up to a certain amount of back rent to keep folks in.
The program that we operate will pay back rent if that's the issue. To prevent homelessness,
Right.
they need that money paid, and then they can pay the rent going forward. That's what we do.
Awesome, okay. Thank you. I'm
You're
still
welcome.
getting my terminology together, so.
No worries.
Do you have a screening at any point to determine, particularly with regard to elderly folks, if people are coming in and I'm thinking particularly there's a Connecticut Medicaid program called Adult Family Living, if there's situations where people are, lacking care, but they have a family member who might be able to take them in, there's opportunities there for additional assistance, in the case of elderly folks, just thinking around for other programs that might tangentially help. Do you have a screening process for folks coming who might be over 65 or eligible for other supports and services?
I would refer that person to our disabilities advocate because she knows a lot more about all those services than I do.
Awesome. Do you, just two more quick questions. With regard to zoning, there's the Rosette Village Neighborhood Collective in New Haven, I think it is, but they're, essentially breaking zoning laws by trying to put in pallet housing or container housing. If you had, a wish list of zoning changes or any sort of things like that that might help the situation, would any options like that be feasible or something to be considered?
Not to toot our own horn, but I mean, we're making strides towards some densification in appropriate areas. For those of you who were here for the zoning presentation a couple weeks ago, I won't belabor these points, but we are all inheritors of a dated zoning code that was very spatially segregative between housing and other uses. Breaking down some of those use segregations and allowing for mixed use allows for appropriate density in different areas, allows for walkability, allows for decreased cost of living where folks might not need a car or might be, in a transit-oriented development district around the fast track station. We have a huge wish list of zoning items that would help improve cost of living, affordability, appropriate densification, many of which will be coming before you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the the Rosette Village Neighborhood Collective, I believe they or someone else in the area is actually trying to change the state definition of housing so as to allow places with, ingress, egress, but maybe that don't have a bathroom, there's a shared bathroom, but I think that's a state level change that needs to be made, though.
We're always keeping abreast of those issues. We are, so for example, one of the recent things we did was pass the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. We see that as a driver of affordability for some folks, either in single-family homes or, in appropriate places with 2-family or 3-family homes that could add another unit and try to decrease housing costs in general. Additionally, we're always keeping abreast of building code potential changes, some of which on the state level are appropriate. It's tough with zoning and major code changes like that because, for lack of a more soft term, but it's easy to ghettoize. It's easy to pick pockets out from your community and then it's easy to not have things be applicable all over the city, because in some places it's not appropriate for development patterns. So it's kind of a balancing act, but we're always reviewing those things. If something makes sense, we sit down with our building department, our zoning enforcement official, and we start to look at how to update the code to allow for better and cheaper development.
Thank you. And last one, this might be one more Mary question, I'm not sure, but if you were with regard to transitional housing, if you were to say there's a primary constraint, would it be a lack of supply or a lack of funding, or is it just both, particularly with regard to transitional housing?
Transitional housing is difficult because what are you transitioning to? The goal of emergency of housing, if somebody's in an emergency shelter, you get them into an apartment, you get them into a permanent place to live. The transitional housing has a lot of technical things with it that forbid you from getting sometimes permanent supportive housing or other things, because now you're not homeless anymore, you are housed, but you can only stay in transitional housing for 2 years. So it's
Sounds complicated.
It's a difficult thing, yeah.
Well, thank you much. That's one area I would like to look at closely, and I appreciate all of your time.
Alderwoman McAdam?
I'm sorry, one more question. Because the immediate need right now, if we found somebody that said, yes, you can use our facility or our building or anything as a warming center, is there any funding in any of that that can be used for that now?
So right now, all of our ESG money, any money that would be eligible for shelter operations is under contract. So every cent that we have received from the federal government within that 48-month window is under contract right now with a service provider. This last year, we funded New Britain Recovers, Community Health Resources, Friendship Service Center, and Prudence Crandall with our funding. To go back onto my point earlier, we can only fund whoever applies. So this is a very small pool of applicants. We try every year to cast a wide net. So
I was only asking because the funding is different from a warming center than a shelter. So that's why I was saying it's under a different bracket. So I was just wondering if any of that could be used as not a shelter, a warming center.
I can,
Yeah, okay. So there are terms that are used that mean different things. A warming center can mean an overflow shelter where you put in additional beds during the winter. It can also mean a place where there are no beds, but someone can go if it's freezing and you can stay and during the day particularly. So I don't know which one you mean, but
just someplace for them to stay warm.
The warming. Okay, so no, there aren't any other funds. The Department of Housing generally funds the overflows, which are the shelters. The warming centers that we have in New Britain are right now the senior center and the library. So if you're going to open a different place where it's specifically for that, and it's not just a place that's open to the public, then you would also need to have funds to pay for that, and that's what you're asking? No. No.
Thank you. Alderman Simpson?
Thank you. So you mentioned rapidly rising rents, and correct me if I'm wrong, the most recent one was $1,650 for a two-bedroom? Yes. So does the city of New Britain provide, you guys mentioned security deposits. Does the city help people directly with that? Like, does the city provide funds for applicants for things like security deposits or meeting rental obligations?
Well, the city doesn't provide the funds, but our office does do that. That's the program that we run, the Homelessness Prevention and Security Deposit Program.
Mhm.
We provide security deposits to people to move into the apartments. The issue, again, is whether they can show that they can afford the apartments. That's a whole other level. I have people that come in to see me every day because their rents have gone up. Of course, their incomes haven't. They are very concerned about that, and I have to be the one to tell them that unfortunately, it's within fair market, and so if the apartment is in such poor condition, then that's something you could possibly raise with the Fair Rent Commission, but based on the number alone, the amount that they're charging is not out of line. So it's one of these catch-22s. Yeah.
So wouldn't these rising rents increase the cost of business to meet the needs of its residents?
I don't understand your question.
So if somebody's rent goes up, I imagine the security deposit would likely be tied to that upon a landlord's wish. And so if rents are rising, the cost of a security deposit goes up. So when
Yes.
people turn to these programs, it's costing the city more.
It's costing the program more. The funding is not from the city, but yes, it
Oh, the
costs more.
funding's not from the city,
It costs
okay.
more, of course.
Yeah, so the city doesn't have like a line item per se for these programs. The line item that the city funds is the position. With the position, we're able to apply for grants, including ESG and home funds, along with Community Foundation and other local foundations that support the program that the Community Services Office delivers.
I see, okay.
Okay?
You're good?
We learned from Caitlin Rose that just recently, 2 outreach workers, might have been HUD money, I don't know, were retained. And I got a call a couple of Sundays ago about an encampment, a homeless person tented out on the Fast Track Trail as one of the places. And I'm wondering, can they or could they team up with police who have, I don't know if there are specific officers assigned to homelessness, or what's your take on supporting the police with social, somebody with a social service bent? And is that a need? Is it being addressed or not?
Yes, it is being addressed through our New Britain Recovers initiative, which brings a lot of community partners together under one umbrella. There are 2 officers that are considered mental health officers, and any calls that might come in about a resident or a homeless encampment by chance, they work directly with that population. So instead of arresting them, they try to link them to services that can better serve whatever need that they are going through. So yes, the police department is very supportive of that. They also have a social worker assigned to them by CMHA that also rides along with them to attend some of these matters.
And this being January 23rd, along with some volunteers going out, Mary and Mallory, that is a regular occurrence, particularly in a cold weather situation.
Well, there we go. The outreach workers, they go out all the time. I mean, they're the unsung heroes of this whole situation. They find people, they know where the encampments are, they go to help with them. When there's no housing, which is of course what they need, they connect them with whatever services and try to keep them engaged long enough so that in some cases people are reluctant to get involved with programs, services they don't trust. So the outreach workers are the people who try to keep that engagement going so that they will maybe one day say, yeah, I'm ready to come in, I'm ready to get help. We didn't have enough outreach workers. We now have 7 in our can, and they have to cover the entire area because they're funded by DOH. And I know, I just want to shout out Mary Ann Farr, who is the outreach worker of all outreach workers and a great person who does great work helping people, finding people, connecting them to services, getting them on the by name list, getting them what they need. So you can put that in the record officially. Thank you.
I'd also like to comment, part of those outreach workers also partner not only with the police department representatives, but New Britain EMS has a Recovery Navigator program that was started through our New Britain Recovers initiative as well. And those folks work directly with homeless encampments, providing Narcan, providing substance use awareness, and staying connected with these folks. As we know, there's a lot of co-occurring diseases that happen. So once they're ready, they're building those relationships, and once they're ready, they're able to connect them with a proper provider that can best suit their service need.
Hello, I just want to clarify, because I think sometimes there's a little confusion. The pools of money that are used by both of your respective offices, yours is all federal funds, and you get a mixture between federal and state of Connecticut funds, correct? No?
The shelters, the homeless service providers in the community, they get DOH funding. We get ESG funding or funding from the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain.
Okay, so I think it's important to note that you're providing a service and you're an employee of the City of New Britain.
Yes.
But the services that you're providing are funded from another source, not
Yes.
from the city's budget.
Absolutely.
And I think that's an important distinction to make, because that you're doing it, we keep saying the city,
Yeah.
but these are all grants. You're constantly applying for grants
Yes.
to then provide the connection for
Yes.
people with the services, but the actual services are being funded through a grant program.
Absolutely.
I think that's important, and I wanted to get, Alderman Simpson was talking about rent increases, and it made me think of Alderman Hargraves, who in his day job is part of the Fair Rent Commission. So I wondered how that connected, probably unfair, because I'm really asking Jarrell the question. So if someone's struggling, Jarrell, and they come to the Fair Rent Commission, how does that commission help people who are on the verge of being evicted?
Well, first I have to, apply before they're on the verge of being evicted, I'm sorry. But the way they're able to provide relief by, if a landlord increases rent by, that's considered harsh and unconscionable, the commission does have its authority to order a lower rent. So instead of a $400 increase that the landlord is requesting, the commission and its powers can reduce that to, say, $200, whatever they feel is fair. So that can in turn help prevent someone from becoming homeless by allowing them to afford the apartment that they're currently living in.
So would it be fair to say that the commission's underutilized then with the New Britain population? Because if we're hearing people come month after month talking about rents going up and the lack of their ability to afford it, and then they become homeless, wouldn't you think that more residents would come to the Fair Rent Commission to seek some kind of mediation in that area?
It has become more popular.
It has, okay.
Over the past year or so. Just already 3 cases this year alone since January 1st, so there's more and more people coming out.
And I just bring that, thank you for answering that question, Alderman. I bring that up to show just another level of where New Britain's at and the things that we do in terms of this area. I think it's important that we are in the middle of identifying problems that are both urgent and need addressing today, and then long-term planning. It seems that your office really is long-term planning with this new money, which is good and not good at the same time because we have this urgent need. But I think when we look at collectively at the services, New Britain is on the right path. I look forward to you guys fleshing out a definition for those other 2 pots of money that are coming and see where that $111,000 go. Is that on the same timetable as the CDBG?
It is. So we rolled out 4 programs this year at the same time.
Okay.
CDBG, Home,
I got you.
ESG, and the Home ARP. So for the most part, they're the same application. ESG, because it's matching funds, has a supplemental form. And we did put some backup information and some guidance documents, links to them for home ARP in there, but it's going to be very simple for people to apply. It's 99% the same application for each program.
So it's important, especially for the new aldermen and women here, that know that ultimately it comes to the city council. So it goes through your commission, goes through your own process, but ultimately it comes here. So we will get to see the applications and we'll get to see your recommendations. But as I said last month, as people were lobbying criticism, ultimately the 15 people that sit around here will have to take your recommendations, process it, and decide whether we agree with it or we adjust the plan based on what we consider priorities.
Correct, and there's a hearing scheduled for Thursday, April 18th of Common Council. By that point, you should have our recommendations. You'll have binders with all the applications to review yourselves, and you'll hear from each applicant agency. We also open up a 30-day public comment period. I believe this year it's from April 7th to May 7th. It ends right before you guys are supposed to vote on May 8th to ratify the annual plan. So by the time you sit down and vote, you'll have received all our public comments. We usually don't receive too many written public comments. Something we're always looking to incorporate, but you'll be able to make the decision based on our department's eligibility review, CC&D's recommendation, the public comments, and what you see at the public hearing.
Very good. And I do want to just say that when I toured the Friendship Center, it was different because I wasn't able to go with you, Nate, when on your scheduled tour. They had said they had a 66-bed capacity, but DOH only funded them, I believe, for 37 of those beds. So when we're talking about there's a capacity, there's an untapped capacity that currently exists in the city of New Britain for emergency shelter beds, but the state isn't funding those beds. And when I had met with you before this meeting, I had asked if there was any flexibility within your department. At the time, you said there really wasn't because everything's contractual. But it's disappointing to know that as we're talking about emergency needs, that we do have a facility that has a greater capacity than it's being funded for.
And just to go back to that 60% cap that we have every year on our $145,000 that could be spent on emergency shelter, and unfortunately, Prudence Crandall with domestic violence, another very important need that we have to, or we're tasked with kind of splitting that and balancing out.
And we would never disagree with that.
So-
And that is a terrible thing. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that is a terrible thing that the government sets up competing needs, and they're both really important needs, and it's very hard. By the time you make your recommendations to us, I know you've all gone through a really painful process to know that there's never enough money to meet the needs. And in saying that again, I'm going to reemphasize how frustrated I get when there's a pool of money sitting on the table, but it's so tied up in strings and what we can't do that it doesn't allow communities to individualize what they need to do for their population. That's just really, really frustrating.
I'd just like to also comment for the record that it is about $10,000 per bed to operate a shelter bed within a unit.
And I will say we've gotten as creative as we can. We offset some of Prudence Crandall's request with CDBG money, where victims of domestic violence are eligible under that, in addition to ESG. When we had CDBG CV funding through the first tranche of coronavirus relief funds, we were able to give Prudence some of that money to free up additional funds that could be used for homelessness prevention, for shelter operations.
Through you, Mr. President, I just want to add, once upon a time, gentlemen, the city could use 25%. You had more flexibility, and I think in these circumstances, unfortunately, the city gave that up some time ago.
Yeah, we were the lone holdout, I believe, in the entire state that went over the 15% heavily suggested cap on public services for CDBG. We were kind of whipped into line by HUD Hartford.
Thank you.
It sounds like we're concentrating on one area of homelessness, which is people losing their rents and stuff like that. Would you say that's the biggest problem in New Britain, or is there other causes as well?
Biggest causes of homelessness?
Yeah, as far as people that are unhoused, that are on the
Okay.
streets. and-
There are a number. Generally speaking, if people still are able to connect with their families or friends, they don't become housed. So there's usually some mental health, substance abuse, something has broken that chain that is the natural support that people have. So I would say mental health and substance abuse issues, people who have some sort of criminal history or find it very, very difficult to find housing, even if they have income to pay for it. There's a lot of things. I mean, I can't say, the number one thing is being poor, okay? That's the number one reason why people don't have housing. But we woven into that, because lots of people are poor. If you have somebody to support you, you can figure things out, or you work together, or you live with each other. If your behavior because of mental health or substance abuse or other issues has gotten to the point where even family members cannot work with you or handle you or let you stay on their couch, I would say that's when, yeah.
Now, this is a
happens.
two-part question in a way, too. Youth prevention. Now, is this leading the way of the future of the people as far as correcting some of these problems?
Well, the easiest way to keep people out of homelessness is to prevent them in the first place, right? So that's why we're huge supporters of prevention efforts. Our youth prevention, a lot of addiction, for those that don't know, start with teens experimenting, thinking that they're old enough to do stuff and they can experiment. And unfortunately, that's, if you talk to folks that are in long-term recovery, they'll tell you that they started about 13, 14 years old. So youth prevention, we have an awesome youth council here in New Britain. I'm not trying to steal the shine of the homeless and housing component, but it is part of our New Britain Recovers initiative, which encompasses opioid and addiction, homelessness matters, and youth prevention. So yes, we want to get our kids on the right path. We want to educate them on social service needs within our city, and we want to empower them to be the best community members that they can be.
So are these programs unique?
Are youth programs unique?
Yes.
I would say so. Yeah, and it's not just city programs, it's community partners, right? And that's what these initiatives kind of pulled together under that New Britain Recovers umbrella, is providing services uniquely through partnerships. And not one size fits all for any sort of program. We need to support our nonprofits, we need to work together, and we need to know that services are provided throughout the city by different entities, not just the city of New Britain, but that we work together with those nonprofit agencies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alderman Pabon?
Okay, I got about 4 things, small ones, but, okay, the first of all, I don't believe in ending up homelessness. We're never gonna do it. This young lady said when we get out 20 people out of the Friendship Center, after they leave, 20 more will come. And they're not only gonna be from New Britain, they're gonna be from other towns. So that means we got another problem. Okay, there's that. Now, the police department, when they go to an area and there's homeless, and it's on state property, the state police take care of that. Like, we had a gentleman come in about a month ago, said that the New Britain police took down his tent and destroyed all his belongings. That wasn't true. That was the state police that did it, because the city police can't go on the state property and enforce these rules. And the third one is, we have a firehouse in New Britain called the Civil Preparedness or whatever it is. Why don't we use that for a temporary thing, just to keep the people from freezing? You know, even to let them stay overnight. You know, that would help a lot, because I see some old folks out there, they're freezing. I'd rather go to jail than sleep outside. You know, I don't know, that's something we can look at. You know, that's something simple, because all these programs they got, it's gonna take time, years. We're not gonna get the money, and the mayor's trying to do as much as she could, but her hands are tied. So, that's my last 2 cents. Thank you.
I'll just say.
Was there any questions you want him to
Oh, I'm
answer, or
sorry.
was just?
I wanted to comment on what he was
Okay, no, that's why
saying.
I'm asking
Oh,
if there's any
yeah.
specifically that you want it to be answered.
Yeah, about never-ending homelessness, I agree with you. The goal is to make it rare, brief, and non-recurring, because we know if we build a 1,000-bed shelter, the 1,001st person will show up. The goal is to get the housing so that that isn't the issue. So I agree with you. Ending homelessness, that's the name of our program. That's when we were maybe naive back in the day. But the goal is to make it rare. That's it. As far as destroying the property, I don't know who destroyed what. I imagine the person whose things was destroyed ultimately didn't care whether it was the state or city police, but I'm sure it was very, very sad for that person. And the last thing that you said about
Firehouse.
oh.
Opening up a shelter.
Yeah, the thing is that if we have a building, it needs to be adequately staffed.
Yeah.
And to have staff, people have kind hearts, and people sometimes think that volunteers can do the work. It's very difficult work. People who, when they are sober perhaps, or in better, not high, not under influence, might be more readily able to be reasoned with. That is not the case sometimes when they show up at the overflows or the emergency shelters, or especially a place like one that you're describing. So you would have to have money to fund staff that could adequately house, handle and interact with and remain compassionate with people who are not necessarily presenting their best selves. That's a very difficult task.
Okay, so we need more money, that's all we,
There you
it's
go.
all about the money.
All right, there you go. We need more money.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
said that very nicely, Mary.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Alderwoman Scott?
Hi. I just wanted to thank everybody that came out for public participation, and thank you guys for coming, because I'm learning a lot, and I appreciate you being here. I just wanted to, I've been listening, and the prevention is a huge thing for me. I have a community psychology background, so it's all about prevention and stopping things from happening. So I'm curious, like the homeless prevention program that you have, do you guys have enough funding for that and enough staff?
We don't have
It's
enough
just
money.
you.
It's just me.
So that's why I wanted to
Yeah.
bring this up, because I
Yeah.
was afraid that you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Because if we could get more staff to
No,
help.
it's
or
not,
is
it's
that-
not a question of the
Okay.
staff, it's a question of the money. I mean,
Right.
sure, if
There's
you
no-
want to
right,
hire
again,
more
it goes back
people,
to the money.
we love more folks in
Yeah.
community services, but it would be better if we used the money, instead of for a position, to help more people out in the community. So that's, the money that we need is more funds to pay for security deposits, because when I run out of funds, and as Mallory said, 6 months in to a program that's supposed to last a year, funds are often gone. So more funds would be great. Again, ESG, once a year, I apply whenever it's time. Now I'm going to try to apply for home funds. Every year, I apply for Community Foundation of Greater New Britain funds. They've been very kind, but they can always say no. I mean, they may choose another focus area. So you don't know what you're going to get. ESG, you kind people, may at one point decide we don't need the money or whatever. So you never know. So yeah, we can always use more money to help more people. As Alderman Pabon said, money is the answer in a lot of these situations, and then figuring out the best use of the money. People think more shelter, a big building is an answer, but again, a 100-bed shelter, the 101st person. What you need is a way to get people out of the shelter and into a permanent supportive or affordable housing, depending on their needs, permanent supportive for people who have issues that they need a case manager working with them ongoingly, supportive, affordable housing just because you don't have enough money to pay your rent yourself, so.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why what I
Yeah.
was getting at, like the caseworker
Yeah,
part,
yeah.
because helping people, because if they can't afford, like you were saying, they can't afford the rent, and then trying to, maybe helping them to find ways that they can afford, like employment or education, that kind of stuff, so,
And I just want to piggyback off of what Mary said. Yeah, we can hire more people, but is that really what we want to do with city funds? We have a lot of social service agencies out there that have caseworkers and case managers. So I think supporting them too and acknowledging that they are out there doing this work is very important. To have a liaison funded by the city, AKA Mary, to work directly with that population and help kind of drive some of those funding needs and funding needs that come through the state to funnel into our service providers that are providing that direct service.
And do you think that people in New Britain know to come to you guys directly? I don't know.
Oh, they know.
It certainly
They do,
seems that
okay.
they know, but, you know,
No.
word can,
Yeah.
more word. My phone is ringing all the time. People come into community services, they drop in all the time. The door is always open. I think people know, maybe everyone doesn't know, but that can be your job to let them know, to come see us. I love talking to people, so send them my way.
And just as a reminder, not to cut you off, but our office is a advocacy, resource, and referral space. So sometimes them coming to us can cause frustration because they think, oh, we're gonna go to City Hall and we're gonna get our rent paid for 6 months. That's not the case. We run strictly off grant funds, and once they're done, they're done. So as Mary said, you can walk into our office any time of day. You'll be greeted the same way, whether you're in a 3-piece suit or you're, coming off the street. It doesn't matter to us. Our doors are always open, and we're there to provide those services as advocacy, resources, and referrals out to our community partners that we work with on a daily basis.
Thank you. I hope that people are listening right now.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
Alderman
Good
Gibson.
evening. Once again, thank you guys for coming out, for everybody coming out to participate. But just to piggyback on that, too, so I work with the school district, and I work with Joe Vavicek, who is the advocate for the New Britain Road to Recovery. And through resources and awareness, we help identify the students and their families that are experiences those unfortunate circumstances. And with the pupil services, we're able to assist, and definitely is in constant contact with community youth service, and we definitely contact Mary Fleur all the time in regards to helping these families out with the resources. In addition, we have an event every year, annual, the Hoots for Homeless, to help identify, once again, to bring awareness and to raise funds and provide resources for those who are in need.
Thank you. Alderman Simpson.
Thank you. So you mentioned you have programs that are supposed to last a year long, and about 6 months in, the well dries up. Do you guys have a number that can get you across the finish line? We shouldn't be running half a marathon, right?
Yeah, that's hard to say, Alderman Simpson, because there's always going to be a need. So, I mean, we ran through $95,000 in about 6 months to program services. So if we had, $200,000, would that make us to 6 months, or would we be able to help more people within that 6-month window? It's really hard to say.
Right, and I imagine needs are changing. I read the Friendship Service Center's annual report, and the number of, I can't remember if it's individuals or families, but essentially their service use has doubled since the last year. I imagine if you guys are running out 6 months in already, that $95,000, for example, could be gone in 3 or 4 months next year. So I'm trying to identify ways to build our capacities and also help meet the need there. That's all.
Mary. It's always back to you, Mary. When Mallory was saying how you're like intake and referral, you refer a lot to the Hope Center, correct?
I do.
The Hope Center is like it's the triage center?
The Hope Center is the triage center during the winter months, and it's a year-round place where people can go and wash clothes and shower and do other things. But during those months, yeah, it's the triage
But when
center.
Alderwoman Scott had brought up, do people know about your services? It's also do they know about the Hope Center services? Because the Hope Center, and it gets to some of the public comments too, people could go in there and use the facilities. They can drop in and use the bathroom, they can go in and take showers, they could wash their clothes, so it's a service where you don't necessarily have to have a bed at the Friendship Center to have access to it. So, again, we're identifying a lot of deficiencies within, in helping the population, but we have to highlight a lot of the not-for-profits and city connections that are out there. I'm glad Alderman Gibson also brought up the school district and their connection to you. So there's a lot of really positive connections going on, and I think that we really need to understand those connections as the city is as the council is going to be looking at possibly creating a committee on homelessness. I've been cautioned not to recreate the wheel by making assumptions that things don't exist or aren't happening or information and data isn't available, so we have to create a vessel by which to house that information. So I think it's very important for us to all be educated not only on what your departments are doing, but on what all the not-for-profits are doing and any other city entities that are a part of this effort, that nobody's an individual silo in this race to end homelessness, that everybody is connected. And I think it's really important for us to understand and value those connections before creating something new. That doesn't mean that we might not ultimately need it, but again, I think it's really important to understand where the information is currently housed, what's happening, and what, if anything, the city council needs to create to better improve services directly to people, not to create another layer of bureaucracy that takes up people's time and doesn't ultimately deliver services to the people in need. Thank you.
Is this on? Okay, I just would like to clarify one thing, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the Friendship Center or the Hope Connection Center, but as an advocate and a partner with them. That space is for people who are literally homeless. So if you are literally homeless and you have a friend that might have an apartment and you guys are hanging out together, drinking in the back, and you need to use the bathroom, they need to go to their apartment to use the bathroom. They're not just, it's not a revolving door of folks that are hanging out on the street and it's a public place for them to use the bathroom. The Hope Connection Center does provide a service, which is connecting folks to a housing plan. They do have case managers down there. As Mary said, basic needs are met with showers and laundry. The staff is absolutely wonderful. They love every person that walks in there, but there is also a standard. So if someone is belligerent, under the influence and not acting in an appropriate manner, then yes, they will be asked to leave, because it's a place, supposed to be a safe place for a community space, which also welcomes children in there. So there are certain regulations and ways that you have to act. So regardless if you are housed or unhoused, that location is for those that are unhoused, and yes, you do have to act in a respectful manner. I just want to make that clear.
Sorry. Mallory, could you just restate the definition of literally homelessness? I just want to make sure my notes are correct here. Or whoever can answer.
Maria. Literal homelessness is defined as being someone who's in a shelter, on the street, or in a place not fit for human habitation.
Okay.
Like a garage, for instance.
Or storage unit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any place not fit for human habitation.
Okay. And just one more question. Would that include housing units which aren't kept up to health codes?
Not under HUD. However, if they're not kept up to health codes, they should contact the City of New Britain's building department so they can go out and inspect and deal with the landlord on that issue. And also potentially, instead of paying the landlord directly, opening an escrow account at the housing court until those matters are addressed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, you're not an attorney, right? So this is just advice.
Absolutely not.
I'm just clarifying because, I know, just clarifying because, and again.
It's just called expertise.
Anyone else? Anyone else? All right. I appreciate all this information because, again, this is what it was about, right? Giving the residents and us as council the information so that we can give it to the others that would ask these questions. And just one question I do have. We were talking about the success rate of the programs have you done, worked with, percentage-wise, close to? I mean,
Look, I know that what I do, because I have to report to the funders, particularly Community Foundation, is I check to see how many people are still housed a year out. I don't have those numbers with me, but I can get back to you with that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's been pretty successful all the way through. Initially, when it was at the YWCA, I had to know 3 to 6 months out, 6 to 9 months out, 9 to 12 months out. Now I just look at a year, and if they're still there, that's good. And it's been good. I'll get you an exact number.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And one for, just clarification, for like the CDBG and all this, they have to understand there's also rules as in three years to apply, because you, again, if you're not guaranteed, but sometimes you do get the approval for the grant, it's usually about 3 years, and then you have to step back and come back again and maybe get a year rest and then reapply. Am I correct?
Yeah, in 2017, we implemented some changes. One of those is a 3-year maximum on repeat funding, that we have not applied that to city programs. PAL, I'm trying to think what other city programs we've
Well, our
done.
internal stuff, so the assistance programs.
Yeah,
Park and
business
Rec.
assistance, anything that goes through our MPP division. Another rule that we implemented was there's a $10,000 minimum. So it saves kind of everybody's administrative capacity in reviewing $400 applications. We put a flat $10,000 minimum. So those were the two big changes that came about in 2017.
Yeah, just a little clarification, because sometimes, they'll apply for the program or the grant, and then they're thinking they're gonna be supplied for 5, 6, 7 years, and not realizing that it's only 3-year.
But is that a self-imposed 3 years?
It is a self-imposed, it's internal policy that we've gotten approved by HUD. So it would require a formal resolution and change through the Commission on Community and Neighborhood Development to alter.
The council just couldn't ignore the 3 years then?
It's in our policies and procedures with HUD. So if we were to be monitored on a program and they're looking to make sure that we followed our own HUD-approved policies and procedures, it could be a potential finding requiring us to pay back the money with city funds. And I would like to clarify too that the CDBG, Home, ESG, Home ARP, those are for eligible nonprofit and supportive service providing entities. They're not individual grants. Sometimes we get some confusion there.
And Mr. Williams, the 3-year rule was also partially developed so that other organizations could have an opportunity at funding. And there's a line that somewhere states they have to provide a way to maintain their programming after the 3 years to be eligible.
Correct.
So it's not just a hard cutoff, it's you're planning to maintain your program after the 3-year.
Yeah, the idea was to make sure that we got new startup entities or organizations that weren't blocked out of funding. So everybody has a chance to come in, receive funding, and maybe get a leg up in developing a full program. So we also require that if you do receive funding in repeat years, that your beneficiaries that you serve and prove to us during your quarterly reports that those numbers increase annually. So you can't serve a decreasing number of people over 3 years or 2 years and expect to get money the 3rd year.
And then you're hypothetically, hopefully transitioning to your own funding at that point.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Need a motion to adjourn? All those in favor, say aye. The time is Smedley, Alderman Smedley, and second, everyone. The time is now 8:06, and meeting is adjourned.